Is the Russian-Ukraine war a threat to the existence of the European Union, or does it contribute to its strengthening and stability? What do you think?
The Russian-Ukraine war is an existential threat to our way of life in the West and the civilized world. And where that threat will be decided is on the battlefields of Ukraine. And the sooner the better people in the West wake up to this fact, the better it will be for all of us. We know that Russia and Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov are absolutely hell-bent on the destruction of our rules-based order. You know, the rules-based order which came out of the rubble of the Second World War. And although it's not perfect, it has given us, in the West, the greatest period of peace, prosperity, and security that the world has ever known. And this is unthreatened. There are a number of other bad actors with Russia. You know, we know that in Russia's pocket is Iran and North Korea and Belarus and possibly Syria. But we also know that China is sitting back and playing a long game and watching what's happening. And, you know, the Chinese have made it very, very clear that they also would favor a new world order. And I suggest, you know, that new world order, what Sergei Lavrov, when he went to the Munich Security Conference in 2017, called the post-West era. And that would be a world order, I suggest, that would be led by Russia as a junior partner to China. We've already mentioned Iran, and we know how close Iran is to Russia and North Korea. But also there would be very worrying signs for other countries in the BRICS, the group of 5 economies that includes Brazil, India, South Africa, China, and Russia, obviously. And we know that Russia has huge malign influence across the continent of Africa. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. And today we are talking about the topic of the prospects for Ukrainians' membership in the European Union. And what do you think? Is there a chance that Ukraine can become a member of the European Union even before the end of this Russian-Ukrainian war?
Well, you know, that's a very hard question to answer. What happened yesterday with Ukraine being granted accession rights was truly historical. And I'm just looking for a quote from Ursula von der Leyen that said, Ukrainians are deeply reforming their country and preparing for accession, even as they fight an existential war for their existence. So, you know, nobody can tell us how long accession to the European Union takes once those negotiations begin. It tends to be different for each country. It could be, you know, how long is a piece of string? But the fact that Ukraine has achieved the right to enter into these negotiations so quickly says something I think very, very significant. If I could I say, I think there's 3 things that are really significant about what happened yesterday. And one is, it's about moving away from Russia. Shortly after I went to Kyiv to work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a senior diplomat who's now a very good friend of mine said to me, he said, Cormac, what you have to understand, it's not just that we want the wealth and the higher living standards that the European Union entails. It's what we want to get away from. And this was a man who had grown up in the dying days of the Soviet Union, and his father had served in the Soviet army and so forth. And that really struck me. That was something that really struck in my mind. And, you know, yesterday was a massive blow for Vladimir Putin. And it's worth reminding people of history. Where did this war start? This war started in Vilnius in 2013 when the corrupt pro-Kremlin dictator refused to sign an EU association agreement and decided to sign a closer alignment with Russia instead. And that, as we all know, was followed by a student protest. At the time, less than 50% of Ukrainian people, the end of 2013, would have supported membership to the European Union. And the students protested. And after about a week, the Berkut came out and they beat the students mercilessly. And something that so many people told me in Ukraine is, you do not touch our children. So maybe even those older people who would not have been in favor of joining the European Union were out in their hundreds of thousands on the Maidan and flying Ukrainian flags beside European flags. And that's something which is burnt into your history. I went to Ukraine 2 years afterwards. So the second thing that I would say, and the other thing, I helped coin a phrase back in 2016 that Ukraine had made more progress since the Maidan revolution than in all the years back to 1991 when Ukraine gained its independence. And there's a Russian narrative out there that Ukraine is a corrupt country. And in the 2 years that I worked with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we had so much evidence of the progress that Ukraine was making in dealing with corruption, with Prozoro for public sector procurement and so forth, and the reform of, when I was out there, the reform of city police forces was a huge thing. And what we now have, of course, with the reason that Ukraine has achieved accession, the right to enter into accession discussions is because the EU set 7 key tests all around reforms. And as Ursula von der Leyen said yesterday, even in the teeth of an existential genocidal war, Ukraine, with more evidence, continues to reform. So yeah, it's about reforms. But I think the third thing that Ukraine in the EU will mean is this will make for a stronger Ukraine, but it will also make for a much stronger Europe.